Hi, I'm Father Isaac here with Maria, and this is the Catholic Workshop. Today our topic is going to be Mass after the COVID lockdown.
In our experience.
How
it went, especially for you as a priest, how your first Mass with more people, or if there were as many people as you expected.
Alright, so I'll start then. So I've had Mass for 2 Sundays now that is open to the public with 100 people or less. Obviously the first time seeing people was with a lot of people in Mass. It was great because obviously it's good to see people, it's good to see the Mass, rather the church full. But I always strive to, even when the church might be full, I always strive to always tell myself that it's not necessarily about the people. May there be 1 or 1,000, that I'm there as a priest leading people in prayer and offering the sacrifice of the Mass for the people, for those that are there and those who are home. And obviously during the lockdown I continued with saying Mass. I would have like on the weekend usually 3 Masses. So maybe because of that, my routine as a Sunday didn't stop. It was maybe a little bit less work on Sundays, but it's still a routine nonetheless.
So overall, everything went well and it was a good experience?
Yes, of course, it was a great experience, and especially, but I would say that especially the first Sunday, on my mind was a lot of how are things going to be, the precautions, masks, communion, and all of those things. So that took away maybe from the emotion because of being concerned about these extra things on the side. How about you? How was Mass?
Mass was good. Mass was good. Returning to church for the first time after the lockdown was emotional. I hadn't been to St. Peter's Catholic Church here in Lemoore since we were last allowed to have Mass. Walking in, it was an empty church, but that's because I was 30 minutes early.
Why did you go 30 minutes early?
Because I thought Mass was at 5 and not 5:30. That's the real reason.
Alright.
But you know that I always walk in on time, or a little bit later. And the reason why I do that is because I have 2 little boys and I like to see where everyone's sitting and then find a spot for us so they can be less distractive to everyone else. Because they're still learning how to behave and I don't want anyone being distracted by their behavior. But anyway, I walked into a pretty empty church and that kind of reaffirmed my fear of having an empty church after the lockdown. As we got closer to the actual Mass time, there were more people showing up, and then my feeling of disbelief transferred over to more of a gratitude. I was grateful to be there. I was grateful to be at Mass again.
All right. And how do you feel about the balancing of our faith with the virus, with safety, with health?
I trust that the church has implemented enough precautions to make people feel safe. I think it's also important to point out that there are people high at risk who would rather wait and see how things go. By that I mean that while we're reopening, the numbers are going up. The numbers haven't slowed down, and they're even higher than what they were during the lockdown. So you can see where people may be getting anxiety from. We're doing something that's counteractive to what we were told at the beginning when the numbers were lower. So that I think that can bring anxiety. But I think it's important to remember that the diocese and the people who are volunteering at the church, they're taking their precautions and making us feel safe in terms of taping every other pew so we can implement the 6 feet distance per family, and also having hand sanitizer right at the door. and cutting some parts of the mass, like Our Father, no one holds hand. During the sign of peace, we're not giving anyone peace if they're not within your family.
In my parish, 2 parishes, Gisting and Hilmar, we also did the taping off of the pews, the hand sanitizing, the masks.
No singing.
No singing. Try to have mass a little bit shorter, which is a problem for me because I like to talk for a while. And then maybe a big one that maybe not too many other places are doing is I opted with having communion at the end of Mass as people leave, which I know is not the best in terms of the respect and making communion more prayerful, because people receive communion, they go out and they talk to someone else and get in their cars. It's not the same thing. You go back to your pew and then have a few minutes of prayer. But I did that in trying to avoid movements of people inside the church. That means they go into their pew, and then when they leave, it's when they leave. They touch less things, spacing, less contact again with people as they go in or out. That's why we did it. And I know there's a balance between faith and health, and maybe we'll never really reach a good medium. But that's the way I did, and I'm pretty happy how it turned out.
Yeah, and I think it's important to remember that the virus is not going anywhere, right? So we have to work with what we have and also rely on the safety precautions that have been taken and taking them seriously, because there are people who are immune suppressed who may want to come to Mass. They might be anxious about coming to a close space with a high number of people, because ultimately that's how some people are looking at it. It's a close space and people are going to be there.
Right, and I think that's the precautions. I think it's good safety measures, because like you said, the virus is not going to go anywhere. We have to learn to live with it, and I think that means doing the important things in life, maybe a little bit different, but they're still there. So we still want to do things that are important. And there's nothing more essential than Mass, than prayer, than our faith. The safety measures, the health measures are not the ideal, but I think they're there to strive to reduce the risk of infection, and then also to try to make those people that are more anxious to feel comfortable or more comfortable to go back to Mass.
Yeah, and it's finding a balance and being willing to take a risk, right? Because regardless of how many security measures are implemented, you can only control so much. You can't control the behavior of other people. So even if, and this is true, so even if masks are required, you will see people without a mask. Sadly, you will. And they may have breathing problems and they may not be able to wear a mask. That's why we can't judge. We can't say, well, why is that person not wearing a mask? Because there are people who can't wear a mask. So for those people who are able to wear a mask and still breathe fine, then maybe if it doesn't cost that much, just take that extra step so we can make the other people comfortable.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And then also, what do you think is going to be the future? The short-term future, the long-term?